Have you ever thought about house sitting as a way for cheaper travel to places you want to visit, to be able to stay a bit longer and connect with a local community? Well, I certainly have. But I also had a lot of questions like, what website should I join, or do I even need to join one? What is the best way to apply for sits? What sort of pets would I have to look after? What can I do to give me a better chance of being chosen? What if I don't have any reviews because I haven't started yet? The questions go on, and even though house sitting seems like a good idea, it's hard to know where to start. This week's episode is going to give you all the answers and what next steps you can take if you are seriously considering house sitting. Because this week I'm joined on the podcast by Brittnay from the travelinghousesitters.com, and don't worry, all the links to the information Brittnay shares will be in the show notes. Brittnay has been house sitting for many years all over the world, and she has a great website with lots of information. And for those who are really keen, a masterclass course that has absolutely everything you need to get started today. Just a heads up, I have done Brittnay's masterclass course, and after completing it, I reached out to see if she would come on our show and answer some questions that I know many people have about house sitting. I asked Brittnay some tough questions that I see people talking about online and some of my own reservations, and she gives her honest and experienced feedback. For those who are interested in doing her masterclass course, which I highly recommend, I learnt so many things I didn't even consider were important, then there will be a discount code in the show notes as well. So go to the podcast player you are on now, click on the link to episode 82, and that's where you will find all the information, links, and discount codes you will need. So let's get started. Well, I'm very excited today. As I mentioned in the intro, we're doing something really different, and I'm going to be talking all about house sitting. And I found the expert and someone I've been emailing and spending some time online with, and to tell us all about it, and that's Brittnay. And so welcome to the show, Brittnay.
Thank you very much, Leanne. It's lovely to chat with you as well.
Yeah, it's been like we've been, as I said, corresponding through email, and I've actually been doing the course that Britt puts out. So we're going to talk about that in a little while. But Brittnay, just so people understand why you're the person who knows all about house sitting, you've had a fair bit of experience, haven't you? You and your partner, Jay?
Yeah, so it's just me now. Me and Jay
Right.
used to house sit together. But yeah, I've been doing it for the last probably 5 years, and then in over about 13 countries we did it in.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
And I have to say, a lot of people think house sitting is just, you rock up to someone's house and you look after their dog for a couple of weeks. And I have to say, I actually doing the course that you put out, Britt, I learnt so much more about what is involved. And I guess there are people that do it the simple, easy way like that. But I love the way, when you explain the things that you need to do step by step, it actually makes it really simple. But it also makes you realize it's a bit like most things. If you set it up properly from the beginning, you're going to have a much better chance of getting better sits and along the way, aren't you?
Definitely. And I think once you have those processes in place, it does make it easier for you to apply, and then you're getting much better reviews then, which kind of snowballs into getting more house sits as well.
Yeah, and one of the questions you ask, and it's probably good to sort of have this at the beginning, is what type of house sitting is best suited, or are you suited to house sitting? Because they're probably a few different things that people haven't really thought about.
Definitely. I always suggest that people kind of start with family or friends. And I think it's a good way to start building up your references. And when you do those first few house sits, families and friends, you can kind of understand if it's for you. I mean, there is a lot of moving into other people's spaces and looking after their most important things, their home and their pets. So you kind of want to understand first, really, if you like having those responsibilities as well.
Sure. And one thing you point out, it's not a way to get a free holiday, is it? I think that you need to be very clear on that.
Definitely. Yeah, there's a lot more involved than people realize. Like I said before, you are dealing with someone's whole life. So that's why I like to, in the course, I give people a handover document, which has like over 60 questions that I've kind of compiled along the way, which they're things that I kind of wish I had asked beforehand, rather than having to call somebody while they're on holidays and ask, what color bins do I put out this week? Or is there any places dogs allowed to go? So there's just all those little questions, even where the power box is. We had one situation where the power went out and we searched for hours for looking for the power box, and it ended up being they'd done a full kitchen remodel and it was now in one of the cupboards. And so it's been us hours to look for it, but it's just easy to know those things like straight out the gate.
Yeah, and they're probably things that you don't think of unless you've done it. And that's one of the things I think is fabulous about the course is you have a whole list of templates that people can use, and that is one of them is the checklist of things to ask the homeowner before they leave or before they hand over to you. So see that's and the bin thing. I mean, I was looking after family member's house recently, and like how many color bins are there now? There's yellow, red, green, and because you're like, what color is going to be next? And so what days and what week are we up to? That's a pretty important one, isn't it?
Definitely is.
Yeah, it's a bit confusing. So there's also look, I think it's great you suggest you start with family and friends and or even just local. Like I noticed there's a lot of people, because I've been on the different sites, and you could do somewhere where it's easy to get to and you're not out of your comfort zone completely. That's sort of what I think would be a great place to start. Yeah, I agree. And I'm sort of at that older demographic. I'm a grandmother of 8, and my husband and I, we as we have the travel podcast, so we travel a lot, and there's a lot of people sort of our age that want to be able to travel more and have the time to travel more, and maybe they've downsized like we have, so we no longer have a garden to look after. We had pets, but we don't now, so it could be. And also we're a bit more sort of life experience, have a bit more confidence. We like to maybe travel and be part of a local community, and that's why I think house sitting would be a great alternative for this generation that I'm sort of talking about, Britt.
Definitely. I was saying before to you that I run a Facebook group, and in there it really is, I find that the bulk of people in there is kind of in your age bracket, because it does work so well for those people. They're retired, they have a bit of time on their hands, and maybe they want to travel, but they don't want to kind of be in an RV or a camper van. So it's a much more comfortable way of travel. I find you can go a lot slower. When you go slower, you're not spending as much money,
Sure.
which I think is great. And like you said, a lot more life experience. So I think that homeowners really like that as well, that you've looked after a home for the last 40, 50 years, and you kind of know all the things that go into that as well.
Yes, and like say for Lyle and I, we used to run a small resort before we retired, and that itself, that you've looked after different people that come in every week, and then you've got a pool to look after, and you do all that sort of stuff, so you do have all these life experiences with the jobs that you've had too, that you can people have much more confidence that you will be able to look after their home and of course their pets now. And that's something too, like one of the things you talk about in your course, which I thought was fabulous, is like to beat the opposition, like besides having your life experience, you can upskill a bit, and you have a suggested list of reading and things that you can learn about, whether it's pool care or animal care. I thought that was brilliant, Britt.
Yeah, and as well as like because a lot of people want to do like the luxury house sits, and I think looking at your kind of skills and experience, if you haven't looked after a pool before, going and learning how to kind of maintain one, or maybe gardening, if you're really into gardening or you don't have much experience, maybe going out there and learning from somebody before you apply for those house sits. And then just kind of when you're making your application, making note of things like, I have experience doing this, and this, and I think it would help with the kind of the things you need done in your house sit.
Yeah, that's very great point. And just interesting too, like, can you maybe elaborate on who uses house sitters? Is it like a whole range of people? Like who would we be applying to look after their home, Britt?
Definitely. Well, I find that it's one of those concepts where people, if they don't know about it, at first they're a bit skeptical, or having I think of my parents, they think having a stranger in my home who doesn't really know how the house runs and we don't know them, is it a bit strange? But once they start to understand that these people want to come in, they want to look after your home, they're qualified, they've got experience doing that, it might be better than using a family member who's not really that interested or doesn't have time to come around each day and water your plants and all that. So it's nice to have someone in the home looking after it. So I find that and also then there's people who do know about house sitting, And they really, and like I find that there's so many people out there that need house sitters, whether it's people going away on work trips, they're going away on vacations. It's so much nicer than putting their animals in a kennel, or like I said before, having someone come around and water the plants. And
Yes.
so you kind of think of all the people in your life who have a home or animals. There is just an unlimited amount of house sits available.
And one of the things you talk about, which I think is really good to know, is you can set up alerts. So you actually have to join and there's several different house sitting sites, and in the course you go through, you list those in great detail, and you have a table which you compare, like what the price is, and like what whether it's just for pets, or like you have a whole table set out, so what countries too, because there's some that are specifically for, there's a New Zealand one and some for Australia, but then there's worldwide ones, so you have all that, which is great, and I didn't know any of that. And so you need to choose how platform you want to be on, or which ones. It doesn't have to be one, and you need to set your profile up with those. But you can actually go onto the sites before you join and have a bit of a look around, but you can't apply to be a sitter until you pay the annual membership. And one of the things you can do when you have that membership is, and you teach people how to do this, is to set up alerts, so you're not having to be on there day, hours after hours, because there is a fair bit of, scrolling goes on if you don't know what you're looking for.
Yeah, definitely. I think alerts kind of really changed the game for me. When I house sit, I look for house sits in places I want to go to. And so I always then set up the alerts so that I'm getting an email letting me know a new house sit's come up and I'm applying straight away. Because like you mentioned, there are so many different house sitting platforms, and some are much bigger than others. And when they're really big, they have a lot of competition. So if you're not kind of in that first intake of applications, it can be really hard to have your application seen. So that's why I think alerts are such a great idea. But like you mentioned, there are so many different platforms, and some people just go for the bigger ones, which I think are great because they have different things like the alerts and the insurance. But then there's more smaller ones which are suited to smaller places. Like you mentioned, there's one for New Zealand, and I think that one's great because it's much less competitive, it's cheaper, you're getting more local homeowners on there. So I
Yes.
think, yeah, like you mentioned, it's good to kind of compare all the different ones and think about where you're going to be going as well.
Yeah, great point. And if you're on several ones, you can generally use the same, profile and that information. And one of the things that you just said then, like if you're not in the first round of applications, like when I was first looking, it's I think the term they have is under consideration. So, they've got the sit there and it hasn't been decided, but they're obviously just, then I guess that means you can't apply anymore. They're actually going through the applications they have. Is that what that means?
Yeah, I think they get, in the one you're speaking about, I think they get 5 applications and the homeowner can go through that and then kind of run through those, see if they're good, and if not, they can kind of move on to the next batch. But I
Okay.
find that most homeowners, they kind of want to pick someone pretty quickly. So
Right.
you want to kind of be in that first batch, I find.
And in the templates that you have in your course, there are application letters as well, and which is great, and then follow up letters, so you can know exactly what to say and when to say it. So that was good. And one of the things that you talk about quite early on, which is, a lot of people are like, well, what if I've never done this before, even if you're our age and you've never done it, and you're like, well, I need reviews. You've got a pretty couple of unique ways of getting reviews. You want to share those with us?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was getting started, I definitely had this problem. You're applying and you don't have any references. It's just like a job. When you don't have any kind of background or experience, people are a little bit hesitant to kind of take you on. So when I was living in London and getting started, I sent out quite a few applications, and I kind of wasn't getting any positive responses. So I kind of had a thought, I need to kind of get some social proof somehow. And so I took screenshots of my Airbnb reviews because I had quite a few of those. And I used to make a document on Canva and include that link in my application. So I found that homeowners, when they could see that kind of a little bit of confidence that, you know, I can look after someone else's home, even if it wasn't directly related to house sitting, they could kind of look at that and see kind of my traits and what they thought I was like caring for their home.
Yeah, I thought that was a brilliant idea. So I went straight to Airbnb and screenshotted mine and went to Canva and, you know, made them look pretty. It's I thought what a great idea. You mentioned the Facebook group earlier, and as I said, I did too, and I've had I'm on there a bit, and I do find there's a lot of not a lot. There are some, you know, questions that people ask that, or they're having a sit and things don't go the way they were hoping, or they're a house sitter and the person looking after the house didn't do what they thought, or, you know, and there's sort of a few times these issues come up, and you actually have a whole module on, you know, problems that might you know, arise, which when I saw that, I'm like, oh man, I didn't even think of that. But then, you know, you do see people having a few problems. So and one of those things is making sure you know what your expectations are and what the homeowner's expectations are. So yeah, can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I definitely like to ask kind of all those questions up front. Even in the interview, I like to kind of know how long the animal's used to being left for. But I also like to I know you might be talking about, I see a lot come up that people say they get to the house sit and it's not kind of as clean as they would like it to be, or they don't feel comfortable in the home.
Yes,
And I had a
yeah.
few of those kind of house sits to start with, and I realized pretty quickly that to live in an environment, I have to be comfortable there. So now when I do an interview, I always, if it's a video interview, I always ask to kind of see around the home. And I'm not looking for like a picture perfect clean home. It just has to be kind of up to a level of cleanliness that I'd be comfortable in. So kind of knowing all those questions to ask up front, I
Yes.
think really make the experience much better in the end.
Yes, because there's, you know, some of the things is, and the other thing that comes up a little bit is cancellations.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess sometimes that can't be helped either, can it?
I guess it can't. And I've always kind of had a bit of a policy. I would never say yes to someone and then cancel unless it was an absolute emergency.
Sure.
But I know with some house sitting platforms, they will provide accommodation if you're cancelled on. So that's why I do have the group, and there is a lot of people kind of looking for house sits on there or looking for house sitters. But I always encourage people to use the platforms, because then there's a little more, I find there's more kind of things that can help them if something goes wrong, because
Well,
I'm not in the group helping people
yes.
like in that regard, because it's something I can't do from that far away. And I think that people should use a platform. So I think it kind of makes it safer on both sides.
Well, it also everybody's a bit more accountable, aren't they? You know, and I
Yeah,
know that
definitely.
when some of the advice is, you know, go, if you have a problem, go to the platform and the way, get them to sort of help you with that. So that's exactly what you're saying.
Yeah.
You know, and of course, looking after animals too, you know, there might be there's going to be things that maybe come up as there are, you know, if you're looking after your children and as well, not that you look after other people's children, but, you know, when I do, I just have my grandkids, and you're just like, please don't be sick while I've got you, you know, because it just makes things so much harder. And you know, if someone's away from their beloved fur baby, and, you know, they get sick, and, you know, you want to make sure that you know what their procedures are. And I think, yeah, if you know all these things before you go, as you point out. You also
Yeah, I always ask the medical background of the animals as well. I like to ask how old it is. Are they on any medication? Am I able to take the animal to the vet if need be? They're all questions I kind of ask in the handover as well.
yes.
And think like just I've touched wood because I've never actually had any medical emergencies with an animal. I see other people talk about it in the group, and I'm so glad. It might sound quite selfish, but I'm so glad that's never happened to me. The only issue I've ever had was once I showed up to a house sit and I put my bags down, and we kind of were looking around the home, and we turned around, the cat had thrown up on my bag, and I wasn't mad about that, but I was more like, is the cat okay? And then it threw up again, and she goes, oh no, he does that maybe twice a day. And if
Oh,
that kind of hadn't happened while they were there, that would have been quite a stressful situation for me. Then probably them taking the cat to the vet, not knowing what's going on, but kind of seeing that happen in front of the homeowner, that was then a prompt for me to put all those questions in
Yeah.
the handover document.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's right. You'd have that sort of handover checklist. And another thing you say to do, which I think's, great, is go and introduce yourself to the neighbours. Like that,
Yes,
that just sounds so
definitely.
simple,
They're a
but
wealth of knowledge.
of course they are. Yeah. And probably someone on your side if you need something too, like I think, it's certainly, and just someone, in the local neighborhood who probably knows the animal and, the neighbors, preferences as well. So, I thought that was a great idea. Now the course that you do, or that I've been through, step by step, as I said, it's simple, but it's involved, if that makes sense. And as I said, I've raised lots of ideas that I hadn't thought of, and I just love the fact that you mentioned you make it so easy. One of the things you talked about too, and I guess it's probably, I know this is sounding very stereotypical, but you talk about being careful what you put on social media. And I guess as a grandmother, that I sort of think, oh, I'll just do my traveling things. But I guess what you're saying there is, someone, they're going to find you if you're doing something ridiculous and you're not responsible. The homeowner can find you straight away. Is that what you mean by that?
That, and I find that some homeowners, if you're taking pictures of the animal in the home and then putting them online as well, I think some people don't like that as well.
Sure.
But just kind of like a job, I think that just not putting things on social media that you wouldn't want an employer to see. I think that that's kind of what I meant in that situation as well.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. And simple, have a nice profile pic. Show. Sometimes,
Show your face.
yeah, right. Like makes sense. I'm also on a house swapping site, and sometimes they don't even have a picture of, they've got one picture of the house, like a view from the house or something. I'm like, well, that's, it doesn't make sense, does it? Show who you are, and people can see your beautiful smile, and think they might get to know you a bit better by that. Doesn't make sense. So the course also, the resources, I love the way you have it all set out at the beginning and a list of them. And then as you go through the course, you link to that resource, and you can print it out if it's a template or a checklist. It's taken you, what 13 countries and how many for 5 years to put this together. Do you now do a lot of house sitting still, Britt?
I did the bulk of it before COVID.
Right.
And then since COVID, I've been in Melbourne mainly, but I do more house sitting for holidays. So back in the day, I was doing it full time, like house sit to house sit to house sit. And it wasn't all travel. All my family, I grew up in Melbourne and all my family live here. So now and then I would come back, and I probably spent a year in Melbourne house sitting full time. So that's another option for people. If you don't have to be traveling the world, you can just do it in your home city if there's the demand there.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a great way to save money if you're looking to, save for a deposit, or you want to continue your travels as well.
Yes. Yeah. And tell me about these luxury house sits, Britt. They sound pretty cool.
I've only done a couple, but I find when you're doing those big luxury house sits, you just have more things to clean and more things to look after. So I kind of prefer the smaller ones sometimes.
Yeah. And I've also noticed too, and because we're not, we've had animals over the years, but we don't have any now. So for us to go on a house sit with lots of animals would probably be more like work than a break. I do find a lot of the house sitting people have multiple animals. But there is a way, once again, you set up those alerts and you can choose what you want to look after. And there are even some that don't have pets. Is that right?
Yep. So I think on the platform you're talking about, you can select no pets. You can select that the house is wheelchair accessible, or they have Wi-Fi. There's all sorts of kind of filters you can set up as well, which I think that way you can tailor it to kind of like what you think you can provide, like what your skill set is. And then you are only getting shown house sits that you can apply for then, or you would be comfortable applying for.
Yeah, so I was wondering why people would have their house sat if they don't have animals, but I guess there are gardens and there are pools, and there's also the safety issue, making it look like it's lived in. Is that why people would do that?
Yeah, definitely. I find that there's certain countries, for example, France, Mexico, Spain, a lot of either people from the UK or Americans have second homes in those locations. And like you mentioned, they just want to make sure the house looks lived in, the rubbish is going out, pipes aren't freezing, and then also the pool or gardens being looked after as well. So if you do want to do house sits without animals, those are kind of good places to look for them.
Right. And there are some some sites where you can apply to and be paid to do some house sitting. I guess that's more if you have much more experience with certain types of animals. Is that what that would be?
I find that there is one. There's an American one. It's called Rover. I've never taken any payment from house sitting just because I find that I always wanted to do it kind of like as an exchange because I was traveling. And I find that if you're traveling and house sitting, adding in payments can cause issues with visas and taxes and things like that.
Oh, sure.
So I'm
sure.
kind of on an exchange thing. But if you are planning on staying in your home country and house sitting, there's definitely platforms that you can use. I think in Australia there's one called there's Paw Shake, but I'm not sure if that one's still going on. I haven't seen it around for a while, but I definitely know in America you can use Rover.
Okay, yes, but mostly house sitting is not a paid gig, and and most house sitters don't ask you to pay them for looking in their house either, because that's one of the things that pops up on the Facebook page sometimes too, doesn't it?
It does a lot, and I think that sometimes for homeowners, they feel a little more comfortable when there's a payment involved. They think that that kind of creates more of a contract or something like that. So I think that if they say, I'm paying for this, I'm going to get this type of service. So I think that, and that's why in the group, there's always a lot of discussion between free versus paid. And I like to say, everyone's welcome here because different people are doing different things with their lives. And if they want to charge and they want to kind of provide that service, that's fine. But if you are just doing it as an exchange and you want to just travel and you want to look after animals and stay in the homes, that's fine as well.
Yeah, that makes sense. I'd sort of, when you've done the course, like I've been through it, and then you go into the Facebook page, you certainly are a lot more armed with information because there's lots of questions asked in there, and it could actually either make you too confident or you'd be worried about doing certain things. But so the course certainly really helped me get my head around, like the best way to set it up and the platforms, and as I said, all those resources. You also talk about finding house sitting in secret weapons in different places, which I thought was great, like expat groups on Facebook and things like that. So, really thorough, so much information. Britt, if someone, is there anything else you can tell us about house sitting that I haven't asked you that I should have? First question. And then can you tell people where they can, the best place to find you and find out more about, the Facebook group and also the course that you offer?
Yeah, definitely. So 2 things then. You mentioned using the expat groups. That's something I've done if I was going to, say, Asia, where this house sitting isn't as popular. I find that if you go into a Facebook group for Singapore, expats in Singapore, you can kind of post in there and say, I'm doing this. But then again, you don't have that kind of protection of using the platform,
Sure.
but you probably might have a better chance of finding a house sit.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's another point you mentioned in the group that you do see a lot of issues come up. And I think that it is good to know that those problems happen. And that's why it's good for people to read and see what they're kind of getting into. Because a lot of people just see it as a free holiday. It's going to be super easy. I can walk right in, get free accommodation. But there is a lot of things that go into it. So seeing the problems come up and reading them and seeing how different people have different solutions for them, I think is really good.
True.
But in my 5 years of house sitting, my biggest problem was probably the cat that threw up.
Right.
And also not be able to find the power box for a few hours. So I think that you hear about all the bad things,
yes,
but you don't hear about all the great house sits people have. It's like reviews. People don't talk about the good ones, they just talk about the bad ones. So it is good to kind of know that those problems are happening and have them in the back of your mind. But there are thousands of great ones out there.
Well, people love sharing the horror stories, like we went to Italy earlier the year, and I sort of spent time, getting information from Facebook groups, and the number one thing everyone was talking about was pickpocketing, and it sort of had me terrified, even though I've traveled overseas a lot. And when I got there, I'm just like, don't be ridiculous, you know how not to be vulnerable to this, so the same thing, people don't talk about the good experiences. That, yes, I get that. Just one thing before you give us that information on where they can find you. I do think it's house sitting isn't just you just can't do it one off. I mean, you can, but there's so much goes into setting it up properly that it's a sort of thing that as a lifestyle that you might want to do, like as you said, you could do it as a lifestyle back to back, but it might be something that you do a few times a year to make all the work and effort that you do worth your time. Would that be a fair assumption?
Definitely. I know a lot of people in the group as well just use it as a vacation. So same with those filters, you can just put the dates in there that you're available. If you know you're available for 2 weeks in August, you just put those in, and you might want to go to a certain location, or you can just tick a beach location, and then you're only going to be shown those ones and you can apply for those. Another great
Perfect.
thing if you're getting started on that house sitting platform is you'll notice sometimes that some say low applications. So those ones, if you're getting started, those ones are great ones to apply for, because it might just be in a location that's a little bit, maybe it's not in a main city, but they're great to kind of start building your references with as well.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Yeah, it does, it's somewhere different. Like, so yeah, go and have a go at it. Yeah.
Yeah, off the beaten track, it might be a great place to be.
Yeah, it might be a great place for a travel podcast episode.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, maybe that's a good idea.
So, Britt, where can people find out more about the course that you offer, and your website? What's the best place for them to find you?
Yep. So I'll give you all the links, because the way we spelled the traveling house, it's an Australian spelling, so it's traveling with double L. So
Right.
it's a travelinghousitters.com, but a lot of people have trouble finding it. So I'll give you the link for that as well. And then I
Okay.
can also give you the link for the course. So if our listeners are interested in also participating in that. And then if you come to the website, there's a contact page, and I always answer all the questions that come in there. So you can ask me anything. You can ask me any questions you have about house sitting. I'm always happy to help people.
Okay, great. And
That was
I'll put
a way to
those
find
links.
me as well.
Yeah, on our website. Well, I'll put those links in the show notes that go with this episode, as well as in the podcast description. So people on the play you're listening on now, you'll be able to click that link, and you'll be able to find all the information about the house sitting info that Britt's been sharing with us, because it's a great course, as I said, and I learned a lot just by doing it. So I loved it. Thanks for your time today, Britt. Anything else you want to add before we say goodbye?
No worries. I was so lovely to chat with you. I'm just so glad that I could kind of put together all of our knowledge over the last few years and share it with other people, because I think a lot of people, like I said, with homeowners, a lot of people don't know about house sitting, and they're also a little bit nervous about it to start with. But once they realize that incredible opportunities it can give you and the people you can meet, they realize there's thousands of house sits out there. So you can go do it back to back if you wanted to. I just love people learning about it and kind of upskilling themselves and kind of building on all those references. So I'm so glad it was helpful for you.
Oh yeah, it's great. Thank you. And hopefully some other people will find it helpful as well. Well, lovely chatting to you finally today, Britt. And hopefully we'll catch up somewhere, in the wide world out there, house sitting somewhere.
Yes, hopefully. Yes. Well, you're up in the Sunshine Coast, so I'd love to be up there with a bit of nice weather at the moment. So maybe if I'm up there one day, we can go for a coffee or something.
That'd be perfect. All right. Thanks. Thank you, Britt. See you later. I really hope you enjoyed my interview with Brittnay. I loved actually doing an interview. I might try and do more of those. Anyway, I told you there's a lot to know, and thank goodness Britt has done all the heavy lifting, and you can use her experience to get you started on your house sitting journey today. The link to contact Britt, the masterclass course, and the best house sitting site she recommends are in the show notes. So on the player you're listening on now, click the link to episode 82 to find those links. And also, if you're interested in doing the masterclass, which I did, the course I did, which I highly recommend, then for all the listeners, Britt has given us a 20% discount. So the discount code you will need is Beach Travel Wine 20. So Beach Travel Wine's all lowercase, all one word, and the number 20. But that will also be in the show notes. So click on that link and get started on your house sitting journey today.